place during the passage of the bill.
My Lords, it's a great pleasure to follow the Noble Viscount Lord Chandos, and like him, I echo his remarks about my noble friend Lord Harrington for the way in which he introduced the second reading debate today. And also, like the noble Lord Chandos, I'm my noble friend. I mean, I too am a great admirer of the Royal Albert Hall in terms of its importance of a cultural and national institution, and it too has formed part of my own past too. In fact, it was only the second time I visited London was to go to the Albert Hall as a teenager, so it's something which I have fond memories of too. I also recognise, as my noble friend has made clear, that he is one of the minority group of 5 appointed trustees and not one of the 18 majority seat holders. So just to reassure him, my criticisms are not directed at my noble friend, but I will have a question or two for him as a member of the Hall's trustee board. I'm also grateful to my noble friend Lord Hodgson for ensuring this debate is happening today, and for his tireless pursuit of addressing the current shortcomings of governance at the Royal Albert Hall. And I look forward to his and other speeches today, and any proposed remedies that they might wish to suggest that we would look at later stages. My Lords, I am not, as my noble friend I think is categorising those of us as speaking today, an opponent of this bill. But I do think it takes some audacity for the trustees of the Royal Albert Hall to submit a bill requesting more decision-making powers without addressing their unacceptable conflicts of interest policy. Just to be clear, as the noble Viscount has already said, the fundamental problem with the Royal Albert Hall's governance regime is that, contrary to standard charity law, its trustees can benefit privately from the decisions they make about how the Hall is run. And noble lords familiar with charity law will spot immediately that this flies in the face of standard legal practice, which prevents private benefit for trustees. So the Royal Albert Hall's setup, which is perfectly legal, is nonetheless unique. And as I say, to be fair, a combination of previous Acts of Parliament and the Hall's historic constitution does not render this situation illegal. But in today's modern world, where public trust in institutions is low, their expectations of accountability high, boxes and seats at the Royal Albert Hall are bought and sold for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds, and trustees of a charity are able to sell their tickets for concerts at prices at least 10 times more than their face value. The situation at the Royal Albert Hall seems, to me at least, completely unacceptable. Now, I should remind your Lordships that I chaired the Charity Commission from March 2018 to February 2021, but I have no interest to declare nor ongoing involvement in this case, and I speak today in a purely personal capacity. I will come back later to the general practice of private seat holders and ticket sales at the Hall, as there is some connection to some of the sort of general points I want to make, but I must emphasise that private seat holders at the Royal Albert Hall, what they do with their own private property is their business and not mine. That is well understood by me. My concern and my focus is about the trustees of a charity, not those who are not responsible for the charity itself. And my concern, as I say, is the fact that the Board of Trustees have failed to modernise the Hall's governance to protect its interests and reputation as a charity. Now, the Charity Commission was engaged in this matter long before I was appointed its chair. At the time of my arrival in post, The then Attorney General had recently given permission for the regulator to refer the matter to the Charity Tribunal to clarify some legal questions about its charitable status. This was necessary because the Hall had resisted dealing with the trustees' conflicts of interest. And as my noble friend has said, they do have an existing policy. It would be unfair of me to say that there is not a policy. There is a policy. It exists. It's there for anybody to read on their website. But it's a policy in the minds of the Charity Commission that is inadequate for the conflicts that exist by virtue of their dual interests. But unfortunately, it seems threatened with a judicial review. The Attorney General withdrew permission and requested the Charity Commission revise the questions and resubmit its application for the Attorney General's approval again. Now, whilst that was ongoing, simultaneously, I held several meetings with the then President and also his successor to see if we could resolve the matter without referral to the courts. Originally, the Charity Commission had proposed changing the composition of the board so that the majority of trustees were not seat holders and introduce a regime so decisions that might benefit trustees could be made by a quorum of non-seat holders. Unfortunately, that was rejected. So failing to get the Hall's agreement to that, the Charity Commission proposed a new formulation of members, but that too was rejected. The Board of Trustees have, as I understand it, even resisted making any internal changes to guarantee that seat-holding trustees cannot sell seat tickets for anything other than at face value or via the Hall's ticket office during their time sitting on the board. These are simple, straightforward measures that I think most people would expect as reasonable of trustees responsible for a charity. My Lords, when it comes to understanding the benefits that private seat holders who are trustees do gain during their time on the board, we don't, if you look at the annual report of the Royal Albert Hall, it isn't even declared how many seats the trustees or their close family members own or the income that they have derived from them. Ultimately, referring the case to the tribunal seemed the only way of finding a resolution, but as you've already heard, as Noble Lords have already heard, successive Attorney Generals dodged the decision until eventually one of them rejected the Charity Commission's request. Now, the Hall has always maintained that what they wanted was a new Act of Parliament to modernise their governance and that there were outstanding issues that needed to be addressed, and that is clear, and as my noble friend has laid out in the bill that they have put forward. But this bill fails to address the fundamental flaw in their model and any of the issues that have been a concern to the Charity Commission for the last 13 years. Now, as I said earlier, I do think it's important not to conflate the private property rights of seat holders with the responsibility of the charity's trustees. But that is what the trustees' failure to act is doing. Increasingly, artists are objecting to the sale of tickets to their concerts at inflated prices. Now, the Hall argues there is a difference between sale and resale because of their private property rights. But that kind of argument doesn't wash with fans when the effect on their pockets between resale and sale is the same. And it's also worth reminding ourselves that the BBC Proms, the world's largest classical music festival, is funded by licence fee payers. Yet that doesn't deter the sale of seats at massively inflated prices. And for all we know, we don't know, but for all we know, some of those inflated tickets may be being sold by seat-holding trustees. We just don't know. My Lords, retaining charitable status is clearly important to the Hall's trustees. Losing it was a big concern if the matter of their conflicts got as far as a tribunal. It's also worth reminding ourselves, as my noble friend said at the start, the Royal Albert Hall hasn't always been a charity. But if that's what it wants to remain, the Hall's trustees need to make some choices. Now is the time for them to modernise their governance and bring it in line with the rest of those charities on the register. I think it's as simple as that, my lords. Just before I close, I have two questions. Could I ask my noble friend the Minister whether the government set out any expectations of the Hall in terms of modernising its governance at the time of its £20 million recovery loan during COVID? And if they didn't take that opportunity then, could he explain why not? And could my noble friend Lord Harrington tell us when the board last discussed how to deal with the conflicts of interest of its seat-holding trustees, and why they chose not to put that in this bill? And also, has there been any recent discussion about what internal changes the trustees could make to their own policies to bring it in line with something as straightforward as saying, for the period that somebody sits on the board, they must resist or are refused the option of selling their tickets for anything other than at face value via the ticket office. But, my lords, clearly the procedure for this public-private bill makes amendments difficult, but I would hope very much that as it proceeds to its later stages, that's something that we are able to secure.
My lords, we